My sister didn't invite my daughter to the wedding, and what my daughter did confused everyone. Family is supposed to be the one thing you can always count on. That's what I believed, until last year, when my daughter was excluded from my sister's wedding, and everything fell apart. My name is Adam, 46M, and I'm a single father to my daughter, Mia, 14F. My family has always been close-knit. We live in the same city, and we make it a priority to see each other at least once a week, whether for Sunday dinners or family outings. Mia has grown up surrounded by love and support from everyone, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. But out of everyone, Mia was always closest to my sister, Rachel, 44F. Rachel and Mia had a special bond that went beyond just being aunt and niece. Rachel never had kids of her own, and with my demanding job, she stepped in to help out when Mia was young. While I was working long hours, Rachel and her husband, Daniel, 45M, would take Mia on little adventures, trips to the zoo, the aquarium, and even weekend camping. When Mia got older, she developed a passion for photography and music, just like Rachel. She looked up to her and even said she wanted to be a photographer like her aunt one day. So when Rachel and Daniel announced their wedding last year, Mia was beyond excited. The wedding was going to be a big deal. Rachel and Daniel had never been the big wedding type, so it surprised everyone when they decided to have a formal ceremony. But it quickly became clear that the wedding wasn't really theirs, it was being planned by Daniel's mother, Barbara. Barbara had always been controlling. She had a way of taking over situations, making everything about her. She convinced Rachel and Daniel that since she was paying for the wedding, she should have full control over it. They agreed, mostly to avoid conflict. Barbara chose everything, the location, the decorations, the catering. She planned the entire thing as if it were her wedding, not theirs. In July, we got our invitations. The invitation was addressed to me and Mia, and I even had a +1 if I wanted to bring a date. Mia was thrilled. She talked about the wedding non-stop, about how she wanted to help Rachel get ready, how excited she was to see the dress, how she couldn't wait to dance at the reception. Since it was a destination wedding at a high-end resort, I booked our hotel room immediately. The website for booking wasn't working, so I had to call the hotel directly. When I got the confirmation email, it listed 2 adults under the reservation, but I assumed it was just an error. A few weeks passed, and we were counting down the days to the wedding. Then, in early January, just a few weeks before the wedding, Rachel called me in tears. She could barely get the words out, but eventually, she told me that Barbara had made a mistake. The resort they had chosen had a strict no children under 16 policy. Mia, being 14, would not be allowed. At first, I thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. Can't we just book a different hotel? I asked. Mia and I can stay somewhere else, and she can still attend the wedding and reception. Rachel was quiet for a long time before she finally said, "No, Adam. The entire resort is child-free. She wouldn't even be allowed on the property." My heart sank. I asked her how this happened, why no one had realized this sooner. Rachel admitted that Barbara had been in charge of booking the venue and had never mentioned the age restriction. By the time they found out, everything was already paid for. The guest list had been finalized. Flights had been booked. Invitations had been sent. Canceling wasn't an option. I was stunned. "Rachel, you invited Mia. You knew how much this meant to her." "I know," she whispered. "I never wanted this to happen. I swear. Daniel and I fought with my mom for weeks over this, but she refused to change the venue." "Barbara refused?" "It's your wedding. She said she wouldn't pay for a new venue, and we'd already spent so much. We couldn't afford to start over." "I'm so sorry, Adam." I was furious. "So what am I supposed to tell Mia?" Rachel hesitated before saying something that made my blood boil. "Daniel and I want to tell her ourselves." I almost laughed. "You think hearing this from you will somehow make it better? We don't want her to hear it secondhand. We want her to know how sorry we are." I didn't argue. I just said, "Fine. But I hope you know how much this is going to hurt her." Later that week, Rachel and Daniel came over to talk to Mia. I stood in the kitchen while they sat with her in the living room. At first, Mia was excited, thinking they had come over to talk about wedding plans. But as soon as Rachel started speaking, Mia could tell something was wrong. Rachel explained the situation as gently as she could. She told Mia that the resort had a rule about guests under 16 and that it was completely out of their hands. She said that if they could change things, they would, but at this point, there was nothing they could do. I watched as my daughter's face crumbled. "But you invited me," Mia said, her voice cracking. "I was supposed to be there. I want to be there." Rachel looked heartbroken. "I know, sweetie. And we're so sorry." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Can't you get married somewhere else?" "We can't," Rachel admitted. "Everything's already paid for. If we cancel now, we'll lose so much money, and a lot of guests have already made travel plans." Mia looked between them, her hands shaking. "I don't care about money. I just want to be there. I can give you my savings if it helps. I have almost $2,000 saved up. Please, Aunt Rachel. Please don't leave me out." Rachel looked like she was about to cry, but before she could respond, Daniel spoke up. "We'll make it up to you," he said quickly. "After the wedding, we can take you on a special trip, wherever you want to go. Greece, Paris, anywhere." Mia's face twisted in anger. "I don't want a trip. I want to go to the wedding." At that moment, Rachel snapped. Maybe it was the stress, maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was Barbara's influence finally getting to her, but she raised her voice and said something that shattered everything. "Mia, this wedding is not about you. You need to stop being selfish." Silence filled the room. I shot Rachel a warning glare, but the damage was already done. Mia swallowed hard, tears falling freely down her cheeks. She stood up, whispered, "I'm sorry," and ran to her room. Rachel and Daniel called after her, but she didn't come back. I didn't even try to hide my anger. "Get out," I told them. "Now." Rachel tried to protest, but I didn't let her. "You broke her heart. Leave." And they did. That night, Mia didn't come out of her room for dinner. I knocked on her door and told her I was there if she wanted to talk. She just whispered, "I don't want to talk to them ever again." At the time, I thought she just needed time. I had no idea that this was just the beginning. After Rachel and Daniel left that night, the entire house felt eerily quiet. Normally, Mia would be playing music in her room or talking my ear off about something she found online. But now, there was nothing, just silence. I knocked on her door before heading to bed, telling her that I loved her and that I was here if she wanted to talk. She didn't answer. The next morning, she came down for breakfast, her face blank and tired. She didn't mention the wedding at all. In fact, she barely spoke. Over the next few days, I watched as my usually bright, energetic daughter withdrew into herself. She stopped talking about the wedding entirely. The excitement in her voice whenever she mentioned Rachel was gone. And most noticeably, she stopped responding to Rachel's messages. Rachel texted her several times, trying to explain, apologizing again and again, but Mia wouldn't reply. I wasn't sure if she was just ignoring the messages or if she had muted her notifications, but she made one thing very clear: she was done. Then, a few days later, Rachel called me. "She won't answer me," Rachel said, her voice filled with guilt. "I don't know what to do." "She's hurt, Rachel." "What did you expect?" I didn't think she'd completely shut me out." I sighed. "She's 14. To her, this isn't just a mistake, it's betrayal. You invited her, she spent months looking forward to it, and then she was told she's not important enough to be there. That's not what we said. It doesn't matter what you said, it matters how it felt to her." Rachel was quiet for a moment before she asked, "Do you think you could talk to her? Maybe help her understand that we didn't do this on purpose?" I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling exhausted by the whole situation. "Rachel, I'm not going to force her to talk to you if she's not ready. She needs time. But the wedding's in a few weeks. I don't want this hanging over us." I clenched my jaw. Oh. There it is. Rachel wasn't just worried about Mia's feelings, she was worried about the wedding being overshadowed by drama. I exhaled slowly. "Maybe you should focus less on your timeline and more on what Mia needs." Rachel didn't have much to say after that. As the wedding date got closer, the tension in the family started building. I had already made my decision, I wasn't going to the wedding. There was no way I was going to fly to some fancy resort, dress up, and celebrate while my daughter sat at home, feeling unwanted. I didn't even tell her I was skipping it. I just cancelled my travel plans, deleted the wedding details from my phone, and moved on. Rachel didn't take it well. "You're seriously not coming?" she asked when I told her a week before the wedding. "No, I'm not. But Adam, you're my brother. And Mia is my daughter. I'm not going to leave her behind just to pretend everything's fine." She went quiet for a moment before asking, "Does she know?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want her to feel guilty about it. This isn't about punishing you, Rachel. This is about me standing by my kid." Rachel didn't argue after that. Maybe because she knew I wasn't going to budge. The day of the wedding came, and instead of being on a plane, I spent the afternoon with Mia. We went to her favorite burger place, then watched some old sci-fi movies at home. Not once did she mention Rachel. It was like the wedding didn't exist in her world anymore. Later that night, I got a text from my mom. "You should have been here." I ignored it. The next few weeks were strange. The wedding had passed, but things weren't normal. Family gatherings, which had once been effortless, now felt tense. Rachel and Daniel were back, but Mia didn't acknowledge them. If Rachel spoke to her, Mia would act like she hadn't heard. If Daniel asked her something, she'd give one-word answers. It was the same at holiday gatherings. She was still polite to everyone else, to my mom, to my other siblings, to her cousins, but she refused to engage with Rachel or Daniel in any way. And the rest of the family noticed. A month after the wedding, Rachel and Daniel reached out again. This time, they had an offer. They invited Mia on a trip. "We feel horrible about what happened," Rachel said. "We know the wedding hurt her, and we just want to make things right. We thought maybe we could take her somewhere special, just the three of us. A way to start fresh." I hesitated. "Where are you thinking?" "She's always wanted to go to Italy, right? We were thinking we could take her there over spring break. All expenses paid, first-class tickets, whatever she wants." I sighed. I knew this was their way of making up for everything, but I also knew Mia. So I said, "You need to ask her, not me." Rachel agreed and called Mia herself. I was in the next room when Mia answered. I could hear her voice, quiet but firm. "No, thank you." Rachel must have tried to push, because Mia repeated herself. "I don't want to go." Then she hung up. I walked into the room, expecting her to be upset, but she was calm. I sat next to her. "You sure about that?" She nodded. "I don't want their pity trip. You've always wanted to go to Italy." She shrugged. "Not like that." And that was that. A few months later, Mia's birthday came around. Every year, I threw her a party with family and friends. But this time, when we sat down to make the guest list, she hesitated. "Dad?" she asked. "Do I have to invite them?" I knew exactly who she meant. "No," I said. "It's your day. You get to decide who's there." She looked relieved and moved on. When I told Rachel that she wasn't invited, she actually cried. "She really doesn't want us there?" "Rachel," I said, "if she's not ready to talk to you, she's not going to celebrate her birthday with you." Rachel wiped her eyes. I never thought she'd hate me." "She doesn't hate you," I said. "She just doesn't trust you anymore." Rachel swallowed hard, but she didn't argue. The birthday party went great. Mia was happy, surrounded by the people she wanted there. And Rachel? She wasn't even a passing thought. But things weren't over. Because soon, everything came to a breaking point. By this point, the tension in my family was undeniable. Rachel and Daniel were trying to move forward like nothing had happened, while Mia continued to act as if they didn't exist. At every family event, it was the same, polite to everyone else, silent toward them. And honestly, I didn't blame her. But not everyone saw it that way. I started getting calls from my mom, from my aunts, even from my older brother, Mark. They all had the same message. "You need to talk to Mia. She can't keep holding this grudge. Rachel feels awful. Don't you think she's suffered enough? She's her aunt, Adam. Family forgives each other." I was sick of hearing it. "I'm not forcing her to forgive anyone," I told them. "That's her decision. But she's being stubborn." "No," I interrupted. "She's setting a boundary." And that's where I stood. I refused to make Mia feel guilty for protecting herself. But the family? They weren't going to let it go. The final blow came at a family dinner at my mom's house. It was a few months after Mia's birthday, and we hadn't seen Rachel and Daniel in a while. Things had been quiet, too quiet. I should have known that meant something was coming. We were sitting at the dinner table when my mom turned to Mia. "So, are you still planning on going to the same university as Rachel?" she asked. "You should start preparing for applications." I immediately stiffened. Mia had always talked about attending the same university as Rachel. She admired her so much that she wanted to follow in her footsteps, study photography, maybe even take over her studio one day. But after the wedding? She didn't talk about that dream anymore. Mia calmly set her fork down and said, "I'm not interested in that school anymore. I'm going somewhere else." The room went silent. My mom, clearly surprised, pressed further. "But I thought you wanted to be like your aunt." Mia didn't hesitate. "Why would I want to be like her?" You could have heard a pin drop. Rachel's face turned pale. Daniel's jaw tensed. The entire table was frozen. I could see my mom struggling to process what had just happened, and before she could say anything, I jumped in. "Mia," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you don't have to be rude." She didn't respond, just kept eating like nothing had happened. But Rachel? She was done. She stood up abruptly, pushing her chair back with a loud scrape. Without a word, she grabbed her purse, turned, and walked out of the house. Daniel followed a moment later, shooting me an angry look before leaving. The room stayed tense for another few minutes before my mom finally turned to me. "This has gone on long enough," she said. "You have to fix this." I shook my head. "It's not my job to fix anything. This is between them." Mom's voice rose. "Adam, you're letting a teenager decide whether she wants to have a relationship with her aunt. You need to be the adult and make her understand." "No," I cut her off. "Mia has every right to her feelings. I'm not forcing her to forgive Rachel just because it makes you uncomfortable." Mom shook her head in frustration. "You just don't want to admit that you're encouraging this. That you like that she's angry at Rachel." I blinked at her. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "You were always jealous of how close they were," Mom said. "And now you finally have a reason to keep them apart." I couldn't even speak. That was the moment I realized that no matter what I said, no matter how clear Mia had been, the family was never going to see things from her side. Because to them, it wasn't about her pain. It was about keeping the peace. That night, I got a text from Rachel. "Rachel, you really just sat there and let her humiliate me like that?" "Me, she wasn't trying to humiliate you. She's still hurt. You need to respect that." "Rachel, hurt? Or has she just learned to hold grudges from you?" "Me, Rachel, don't do this." "Rachel, no, Adam. I've been thinking about this for months. And I realized, this isn't about the wedding anymore. This is about you. You never liked how close we were. You were always jealous of how much Mia adored me. And now you're encouraging her to shut me out, because it makes you feel better." I stared at the screen, barely able to believe what I was reading. "Me, you really think I'd use my own daughter like that? Rachel, you're her father. You're supposed to teach her to forgive. But instead, you're feeding her resentment." That was it. I was done. "Me, these are the consequences of your actions. You let Barbara run your wedding. You let her exclude Mia. You let her treat my daughter like she didn't matter. And now? You're blaming me because Mia is holding you accountable?" Rachel didn't reply. She just left me on read. After that conversation, I made a decision. I told my mom that Mia and I would be stepping back from family gatherings. Not permanently, just until things settled down. She wasn't happy, but for once, she didn't argue. To my surprise, my older brother, Mark, actually supported me. "I get it," he admitted. "They're asking you to force Mia into forgiveness, but that's not how it works. She'll come around if and when she's ready, and if she doesn't, that's her choice." That was the first time I felt like someone actually understood. Mia, on the other hand, seemed relieved when I told her we were taking a break from family events. "Does this mean I don't have to deal with Grandma pressuring me anymore?" she asked. "Not for a while," I said. She actually smiled. That night, for the first time in months, she put on music in her room again. And I knew I had made the right choice. The next few weeks were quiet. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Rachel. She sounded exhausted. "I just wanted to tell you," she said, "Daniel and I are separating." I was not expecting that. "What happened?" Rachel sighed. "A lot of things. The wedding. Barbara. Everything with Mia. It just opened my eyes. I don't think I ever really wanted that life." I sat in stunned silence. "Anyway," she added, "I just thought you should know. I need to figure out my own mess before I even think about fixing things with Mia." It was the first time she had acknowledged that she was the problem, not me, not Mia. And for the first time since this all started, I actually believed she was going to try. I just wasn't sure if Mia would ever let her back in. Because some things? They can't be undone. Rachel's call about her separation from Daniel caught me completely off guard. After months of her defending Barbara, justifying her choices, and insisting that Mia needed to get over it, it was shocking to hear her finally admit that she had made a mistake, not just with the wedding, but with everything. But even though she was starting to realize the damage she had done, I knew one thing for certain: Mia wasn't ready to forgive her. And honestly, I wasn't sure she ever would. As the holidays approached, I had a decision to make. Would we go to the big family gatherings or keep our distance a little longer? I sat Mia down and asked, "Do you want to go to Grandma's for Thanksgiving this year?" She hesitated. "Will Aunt Rachel be there?" "Probably." Mia frowned, picking at the corner of her notebook. "Will everyone expect me to talk to her?" "They might," I admitted. "But you don't have to do anything you don't want to. It's your choice." She thought about it for a long time before nodding. "I guess we can go. But I'm not going to pretend everything is fine." "Fair enough." So we went. And to my surprise, nothing dramatic happened. Rachel didn't try to push Mia into a conversation. Daniel wasn't there. Barbara wasn't there. The usual tension that had been thick in the air for months was still there, but for the first time, it wasn't suffocating. Mia sat with her cousins, talked to my mom, and helped in the kitchen. And Rachel? She kept her distance. But later that night, as we were getting ready to leave, I noticed something unexpected. Rachel and Mia were sitting at the same table. Not talking. Not laughing. But sitting there. For the first time since the wedding, Mia wasn't immediately walking out of the room the second Rachel entered. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. A month later, on Christmas Eve, something even more surprising happened. I saw Rachel and Mia having a conversation. It wasn't long. And from a distance, I couldn't tell what was being said. But I saw Rachel speaking softly, looking genuinely apologetic. And Mia? She wasn't shutting down like she usually did. Later that night, as we drove home, I asked, "What did Rachel say to you?" Mia was quiet for a moment before finally replying. She said she was sorry. And that she doesn't expect me to forgive her. I glanced at her. "And how do you feel about that?" Mia shrugged. "I don't know." That was the most she had said about Rachel in months. I didn't press any further. I knew that whatever happened next, it would be on Mia's terms. After the holidays, things didn't magically go back to normal. Rachel and Mia weren't suddenly close again. But the wall between them started to crack, just a little. Mia started acknowledging Rachel when she spoke. If Rachel asked her a direct question, she would answer instead of ignoring her completely. They weren't family again. Not the way they used to be. But for the first time in a long time, there was progress. And that was more than I had expected. One night, while Mia and I were watching a movie, she turned to me and said, "I don't think I want to be a photographer anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? You always loved it." She shrugged. "I still like it. But I don't want to do it as a career. I've been thinking about other things." "What kind of things?" She hesitated before smiling. "I think I want to write stories. Or maybe design video games." That did surprise me. But at the same time, it didn't. Mia had always loved storytelling, whether it was through pictures or words. "That sounds awesome," I said. "What made you change your mind?" Mia took a deep breath. "I guess I just realized. I don't have to follow someone else's path. I can make my own. And in that moment, I realized just how much she had grown from all of this. She wasn't just a hurt little girl anymore. She was becoming her own person. A few weeks later, I had another meeting with Rachel. We had been making an effort to meet up, just the two of us, every couple of weeks. It wasn't easy, we still had a lot of unresolved tension, but we were trying. This time, we met at a small cafe. Rachel looked tired but more at peace than before. I'm moving forward with the divorce, she said after we sat down. Papers are almost finalized. I nodded. How are you feeling about it? She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. Honestly? I feel free. I should have left Daniel years ago. And I should have stood up to his mother instead of letting her control everything. She looked at me, guilt still clear in her expression. I should have fought for Mia. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I let her sit with that realization. Because she should have. And no amount of apologizing would change what had already happened. Finally, I said, it's up to Mia now. If she wants to rebuild a relationship with you, that's her choice. And if she doesn't, you have to respect that. Rachel nodded slowly. I know. And for the first time, I think she really meant it. Where we are now. A year has passed since the wedding drama. Rachel and Daniel are officially divorced. Barbara is no longer a presence in Rachel's life. Mia still isn't close with Rachel, but they're civil. They'll exchange small talk at family events. Mia will respond to her texts sometimes. But the deep bond they once had? It's gone. And I don't think it's coming back. Mia is happier now. She's focusing on school, planning for university, and exploring new interests. She's no longer trying to be like someone else, she's creating her own path. And as for me? I've learned that sometimes, being a parent isn't about fixing things for your child. It's about standing by them while they heal. Mia might never forgive Rachel completely. And that's okay. Because in the end, this wasn't just a lesson for her. It was a lesson for all of us. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.